Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the UXJOBS Weekly Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Sykes, and today we are broadcasting from the town of Waialua on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. And I just have to say, I'm really thrilled that I'm finally doing this. I had a few speed bumps along the way, but finally getting there, and here we are. So that's awesome. Let me start off by setting expectations. I want to prime your prefrontal cortex, talk about what the goal of the podcast is. And it's really just to empower you, the job hunter, the designer, to find your dream job or project and figure out, if you're brand new, how to transition into this field. And so what can you expect in the weeks to come? Well, I want to start recording one podcast a week. Each week have new guests, new topics. I really think it's important that guests share their personal experience. I want to have plenty of actionable things that can make you either a better designer or help you get into this field. I am not interested in the theory of cooking garlic chicken. I want to present a step-by-step way to do it, so you can get the analogy. So that when you leave, when you're done listening to the podcast, you're like, I know what to do next. So that's really important to me. So what are we going to talk about? We're talking about career advice, portfolio advice, interviewing advice, and also techniques on, if you're an existing designer, how to defend your design so you don't get run over in a conference room, and how to pitch your design ideas, because maybe you're a designer thinking turned entrepreneur. I definitely want to serve that as well. So we're going to do also a deep dive on creating your own products, how to do that, how that works. I want to bring in some VC guests as well. I think that would be huge. And then I want to talk about being a digital nomad. Right? It's a big thing that people ask about. It's what I am currently. You can travel the world with your laptop. And with that, let me segue into a little bit about who I am. Like, who is this guy? So my name is Ben Sykes, and I've been designing for 20 years by accident. I started in 95 as a hobby while I was trying to work in the motion picture industry as a gopher for coffee. I've worked on American Idol Underground, which was the web version of the television show when it was just starting. And then I've worked at Microsoft, at Cisco, was at Google for a few years. I taught design at General Assembly and helped write the curriculum for the Apprenticeship Program. And I also taught design at San Francisco State University. So I only have to do that intro once, and then that's it. I don't have to do it anymore. So I started a UXJOB feed on Twitter. It's IA_UXJOBS, and I did it for myself, and because I wanted to keep an eye on the trends and what was going on in sort of the world as far as projects, and it took on a life of its own, frankly, and it's almost, if not nearly, the largest UXJOBS feed on Twitter in the world. Lots of changes coming, lots of new content, lots of exciting stuff. And I can't wait to get it to kind of like where the vision is. That's the goal. So let's get right to it. I'd first like to introduce our special guest, Brian Wee. Brian is a user experience and interface designer who has both worked for CloudOn and Intuit. He's interested in understanding how people think, solving problems iteratively, creating delightful micro-interactions. He's also an advocate for design thinking. He believes that many problems can be solved with empathy, creativity, and rationality. You can find him at brianwee.com, which is BrianJoei.com. And with that, let me introduce Brian. Hey, Brian, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Great to have you. So let's just start off. Introduce yourself. Just in case I didn't give you the best intro in the world.
Sure. I mean, I think you did a great job, actually. I'm a user experience designer, interaction designer. I think just designer. The titles kind of change from place to place where I go, but ultimately what I love is building product and using, I guess, my skills of high fidelity prototyping and usability testing and all of these fun, delightful micro-interaction designs to make good product.
Cool. So how did you get started in UX?
So I got started, it was maybe only 5 years ago now that I made the career switch. And I think my origin story, so to speak, is I studied social psychology, or I studied psychology, behavioral psychology, in during my undergrad at UCLA, and then after that, I got a job in sales at Yelp, and I think as a sales person, it's kind of like usability testing in some ways. You're talking to a lot of people, and a lot of these people have problems about your product. I would say the only difference in between sales and usability testing, well, maybe not the only difference, but one big difference is, when you're doing sales and you hear them talk about a problem, you go, okay, and you write it down on a piece of paper.
Sure.
And then you say like, oh yeah, I'm going to talk to the engineers about that. And then at the end of a sales call, you crumple that up and throw it away. And at the end of a usability test, you write that into the notes and actually talk to someone about it, And so I think as a salesperson, it was just a little tough because I think I really wanted to help the people that I, encountered. And so after that, I think I wanted to, I wanted to be a front end developer at that point. So I started taking classes at CCSF, which is a community college in San Francisco. And I think I remember that the experience of like learning the technology and building some of these projects, getting really interested, not necessarily in the code, but also like diving really deep into creating these actual designs of the projects and not so much the functionality. And I remember that was maybe the first time the thought crossed my mind that I should be a designer, was that at that time. And then someone recommended me to take the General Assembly UXDI class. And I looked at it and I was like, ooh, that's a lot of money. And I went to one, I think, like just like an introduction to the teacher. She was just kind of, talking about the class and setting up expectations of what you're going to learn in the class. And I went, and it was Christina Woodkey, who I did not know at the time.
Sure.
Of course, like later that night when I Googled who she was, I was like, oh, fuck. And then I was like, I got to take this class. This person is amazing. She's worked all over the place. Of course, the talk that she gave was also super inspiring. Just like, I think you could just immediately know that she knows her shit. That's like the aura that Christina Woodkey has, right?
Sure.
And so took the UXDI class, and then I met you, Ben, through the Apprenticeship Program.
That's right.
That was amazing. And I've worked at 2 companies since. Worked at a small startup, Cloud On, that got acquired by Dropbox about 2 or 3 years ago, and just wrapped up a contract at Intuit. So feeling pretty good.
So you've been an interaction or user experience designer like professionally for what 2-3 years now?
I think maybe it might just be 4 years now, or maybe 3.5 or 4. Yeah, I guess that. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And you started off, wanting to basically design front end, and discovered that, coming from sales and being sort of a people person, that, hey, there's something to the creating the experience and the empathy involved in creating a product. Yeah,
that's totally it. I mean, I think I didn't know it at that time, but when I got really into social psychology in college, it came out of a place where I just really wanted to understand people and understand why people do things. And that kind of interest carried on, and I guess rebirthed itself maybe, I guess 7 years later, when I realized like, this is design. This is how you do design now. And it was pretty revolutionary to me at that time, of course. And And so I got really excited about it. Yeah.
Now you started to work. If I recall, you started working at Cloudon right after General Assembly. So
hmm
was that surprising to you that you were already in working in the field, making a living in the field so fast?
It was, yeah, totally. I thought I was gonna have to hustle a little bit more, I guess, or just like starve a little.
Sure.
But that got set up actually. I don't know if they still do this now, but General Assembly, had some apprenticeship program, and so yeah, I think I started off as an apprentice at CloudOn, which I think is just an intern, but doing UX design there, and they decided to keep me, and that was a really amazing time. I felt really proud about that, and fortunate.
Totally. And you actually worked on well, their product, if I recall, became like the number one productivity in the App Store. Explain that. What was that all about?
Yeah, that was a really big uh, milestone for us. So I guess in the App Store you can sort by categories, and then there's a productivity category, and from that category, everyone like has their app there, like Dropbox is there. I think Microsoft Word and all the whole Microsoft suite just came out at that time. And then when we launched a new editor for our document editor, and it kind of rose the ranks, and it got number one, and that was kind of a huge milestone for us.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
And wow. And what kind of work were you doing at Cloud On? What did you start off doing, and then what in the end? What were you doing? How did that change?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think the first project I worked on, it must have been with the just like the file organization systems, and I think very early on it was doing a lot of the background research about like who this product is useful for, and making the personas and trying to translate those personas into how we make product decisions. And then later on, I think I think we both kind of realized that I was really good at making these high fidelity, pretty realistic prototypes for these mobile apps, which at that time was really new, or at least it felt like that. And what we could do, the ideas we came up at the beginning of the week, we could be testing them live in front of people by the end of the week. And so I think towards the latter end, working there, I was doing a lot of that, just kind of like, all right, that sounds like a good idea. Go straight to the computer, or do a little rapid prototyping, kind of finesse and refine that idea a little bit more, and then by the end of the week, we're having a workable prototype and doing some user research.
So, when you got started? What were some of the biggest challenges that you had?
I think. So let's see. The biggest challenges. I think it would have to be. Let me think about that for a little bit.
Well, let's just give you an idea. Like some people, they're like, "Well, I've never worked in an office before. That's it," or "I haven't worked in such a fast pace before," or like, "This is, the demands are crazy. I didn't expect that a startup would be like this."
Yeah, that definitely rings a bell for me. Working, I guess, at a startup wasn't too new for me at the time, but I think working on a product side of a startup was new. So I kind of understood some of the gist of like the fast pacedness of it. But I think when you're on the product side, it felt like there's a lot more responsibility. And I think it was knowing what battles to win that to fight for, and then what battles to